Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, the last race preview of the season. Tears running down Benji Naesen's face. As usual, this show is supported by our show partner, L'Ecole. It's the Giro di Lombardia preview. It's a very, very difficult route. I'll have the Paris Tour highlight video on my channel on Sunday. This is actually on Saturday. It's one of the only monuments I think they have, not on a Sunday. And then we'll have a recap after this, of course. But the profile of this race, it's really, really hard. As I said, there's no Civilio-San Fermo combo at the end, where you might remember Civilio often attacks from Mollema, Pinot against Nibali. I was getting to Nibali. It's my biggest video ever, Benji, is the Nibali descent off there. My best video ever made. Anyway, this year, though, not in it. If you're going from Como to Bergamo, I'm actually quite familiar with this region myself.
You went bird watching there, right?
Nah, hiking. Well, actually, no, yeah. It was more like I was looking at the ibex and like deer and things there. Anyway, 240 k's long, hard climbs, 4,700 meters climbing. We have Roncola Alta is like 9 k's at 6%. They have the Madonna del Ghisallo, of course, at the start, but I don't think that'll be too selective, maybe for the break to form. But the harder climbs in the last third, they have 11 k's 6%, then into 10 k's 3.5%, which is a fake news climb, the Zambla Alta. The last 3 k's are at 7%. And then they have the Passo di Ganda, which is 9k 7% descent, then a flat section, then a short little punchy climb of 1,300 meters 7%, which is like crest, I think, like 3k's from the finish in Bergamo. It's just really, really hard, Benji. Who do you think this favors? Don't say any names, but what sort of rider? It's the opposite spectrum to like the Flèche Wallonne races, and it's Liège on crack to me.
Well, it depends, because I do think that certain riders who are decent at Flèche Wallonne could also do quite well here. I am looking at a rider that can get over the longer climbs, like a 10-kilometer climb, and we've got quite a few riders that fit in that category. Perhaps riders that want to go early, because this reminds me of the kind of stage you had in Itzulia, the stage where Roglic went early with that Astana coup, because you've got so many of these climbs following each other up that there's not that much of a gap in between to try and regroup. So if someone goes early, then it might be in their favor as a consequence. But going too early might be plainly just cutting your own legs off, because that's also not going to get you anywhere, I think. So, for example, like you said, that Madonna del Ghisallo, I think that's not very effective or won't do anything in this race. That was the climb that was part of the last year's edition. It was the beginning of the larger climb of the day in Lombardia 2020, where you had the Muro di Sormano just after it. So that Sormano descent where Remco fell is not in this parcours, but I've asked around and there are quite some technical descents in this parcours. So he's not really happy about the descents yet, I think, knowing the technicality of them. But like, in all honesty, we know the kind of riders that are favorites for this race based on the Italian classics we just had. We had Coppa Bernocchi, we had Milano Torino, we had, what was the other one?
Giro dell'Emilia.
Yeah, pretty important one, But who are the riders that you see as the favorites for this parcours?
Roglic, obviously favourite. He won it. There's no betting odds, by the way, so we'll just set our own book here. But there's no Giro dell'Emilia dominant. I watched that. Me, Benji, and probably everyone that's degenerate enough to listen to this, probably the only people that watch that outside of Italy. Fantastic race on Saturday. I'd strongly recommend finding a way, VPN to Italy or whatever, to watch it. Outstanding. He won that a nuclear launch in the last, countering Remco in the final there, which was it's sort of Imola-style course, that last circuit. Not as long climbs as we have on the weekend. Then Torino, longer climb, the Superga, the Basilica de Superga climb up to that. I love it. 4Ks, 9%, although I didn't watch today. 17-minute climb, and Roglic won again, although numbers and other riders were able to put him under pressure. Coppa Bernocchi, not really relevant for me, except to show that Remco is still in good condition. He won with an obscene solo there. Again, I think it suits the pure, like the climbers, Benji, like the riders we see that do well in the hardest Grand Tour stages. I think Maida, Padun, Haig, Landa on the assumption they were all in good form, I'd like Ben O'Connor, Pogacar, Dan Martin, even more so maybe than, Mike Woods' climbing has improved, Simon Yates, Adam Yates, etc. But Roglic has to be the favourite because he can win this in 3 ways. He can no risk, no glory, the final Passo di Ganda descent, and then he's good enough to TT in the valley, and it's a one-day race, so it actually makes sense to go on the descent if you can. He can attack on that 1,300 metre 7% climb because his punch is obscene, and he can win the sprint, although it's a sort of downhill finish. So he can win in 3 different ways. Or he could just nuke people on that 9K climb, Benji, 4 different ways. So that's why he's my favourite, and a pretty short one at that. What do you see? Do you agree with that, or do you see Adam Yates or someone else, or De Koning or Evenepoel?
I think betting-wise, he should be the favourite based on the races we've had so far. But I think there are ways to try and, put him in a difficult situation. And I think De Koning will play a big role in that. We know that Pogacar is obviously at a strong team at UAE, but if we're looking at De Koning, they have Alaphilippe, Almeida, Evenepoel, Van Zevenand, Bajoli, Cataneo, and Devenijns. Devenijns was really strong as a domestique in Milano-Torino, and he was doing that for Alaphilippe and Cataneo as well, and also for Almeida. And we've seen those 3 riders over the last couple of days now, and we saw Evenepoel and Bernocchi. Now, I've noticed that also in Emilia, Evenepoel was defaulting to be the rider that paces up every climb to try and put pressure on the likes of Roglic, to have Almeida sprint at the end of that race, Giro dell'Emilia, for example. That was a notable thing that we saw in the race. And it seems like Remco just always paces if he's in a group that is at the front of the race, even if it doesn't favor him at this point. So I think that will happen again, and I think that he will attack earlier than the other riders in his team, for example. I feel like Alaphilippe was a bit weaker than I expected in Milano-Torino. He was dropping early on the last Superga climb, and therefore I don't see him beating Roglic on this parkour unless it's a very, very slow race. And I just don't see that happening.
Not at all.
And therefore that's out of the cards for me. Almeida seems to be the strongest climber on that squad at the moment. But the question is he, how are they going to play it? Because they have so many leaders now. Cataneo was strong as well, but also fell into a domestique role on the Superga climb in Milano-Torino. So for me, it's Almeida or Evenepoel, the leadership at De Koning. And if I look at that, there's one thing you can do. Evenepoel early and Almeida on the last climb, just like I would have played Giro dell'Emilia.
Which last climb, the punchy one or the proper long last climb?
I would play Almeida defensively while I be offensive with Remco, and
Joao can win a sprint too against Almeida can win a sprint against non-Roglic's too.
Yeah, that's true. Evenepoel cannot do that. We've seen that quite a few times. That his sprint is not too extremely good. But then the question is, how early can he go? He can't go on Madonna del Ghisallo because that's like 20K into the race. He could go with 150K to go. I don't see that happening. I expect him to go on the, what's it called? Docena? I can't see it. It's too zoomed out for me. Help me out. The third last climb.
Oh, Docena. I see it in that the rolling ridgeline after that, Benji.
Okay.
I think when it's thinned out a bit, they'll try and get rid of the Jumbo-Visma domestiques, which Quickstep should be able to do.
And then Cataneo, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And then I think that's the perfect place, sort of rolling terrain for Evenepoel to attack, and then build it up, and then force Roglic into a difficult situation, or Ineos to chase him, and then you've got sort of a not so steep climb. But then he's going to have to do a long descent full on his own. But I think that's a good place early. I think you want to open it up early. If you're entering the last 5Ks or 10Ks of races with Roglic, big problems for yourself, generally speaking, unless it's flat and you can attack him.
Unless you have multiple people, Almeida and Remco then can try and attack left and right. But yeah, that's the only possibility I see, that they are still there at that point,
No Adam Yates, Benji, Giro dell'Emilia, just Almeida and Evenepoel with Roglic. I think De Koning win in Emilia. I think, unless Roglic is even better than he was outstanding in the finish. But yeah, you can work him over, which is what Quickstep nearly did to good effect. The group was just too big. The Bahrain team, I'm not sure that's confirmed. That start list here, we're just going off what I've tried to compare First Cycling and PCS. They got Haig down there. Not sure that start list is confirmed. I'll expect Buitrago and Williams. What about Stephen Williams as a big dark horse, Benji? after that Croatia race win, he slapped Simon Yates actually, and that had like a few decent climbs in it.
Simon Yates wasn't riding at a very high level in my eyes, to be honest. He also got beaten in GC then by Mick van Dijk and Marcus Hulgaard, who gained a bit of time on a different stage, but in all honesty, it's not a great performance by Simon Yates in this race in my eyes, and therefore I wouldn't rate Stephen Williams as high as we are looking at Pogacar and Roglic. To be honest, I don't think that Pogacar is at the level that he needs to be to easily win this race.
No.
And we've seen it quite a few times now. On Giro dell'Emilia, we didn't see him, like, at all. Then in Bernocchi, was he there? I don't remember. But I remember that he was in that other race that they rode just the day before Torino. Which bloody race was that?
Trevali
Varesine. Yeah. And he was able to go into the attack quite a few times, went early together with Formolo in the group. And then they made some tactical mistakes in my eyes where they tried to play on the Formolo card while they had the strongest riders in the second group. And therefore they lost that race. But he did spend a lot of energy. But a top level Pogacar wins that race without having to be in that situation in my eyes. So today, as we are recording, we just watched Milano-Torino, just to be clear. So we saw that Pogacar's climbing there was also not on the level of Roglic. He was being dropped roughly at the same level as Almeida was. And Adam Yates was one of the strongest climbers in that race. And so was Roglic, of course, because he ended up winning that race. So I don't think he's on the level to beat Roglic and Almeida. So he would need to do it early as well. And I don't know, if you look at that team, it's on paper, it's a godlike team. Pogacar, Formolo, Hirschi, this is an unconfirmed team if I recall correctly.
Micah,
McNulty, Ulisi, and Juan Ayuso. Now, if I look at this team, I'm like, Ayuso, I'm super hyped about that. I want to see what that does. But for the rest, Mark Hirschi was not as strong as I hoped for in Milano-Torino either. This parkour is even harder. So I don't have much confidence in him being able to bring this home for that team as well. It's all in Pogacar, I think. And Micah was strong in Milano-Torino, but he's still a domestique, you know? So I don't know. I think that Pogacar will have a hard time winning this race unless it comes down to an actual sprint against Roglic at the end, and then he might have a chance.
I'm convinced the UAE team got absolutely pissed on the Friday night before Giro dell'Emilia. You look at that parkour, one rider didn't DNF, and he or she DNFs on that parkour, which is literally designed. Even if he's saying he's not as good as last year, he's still top 10 League Asia this year. I'm convinced they went out on the town the night before, and they're just slowly working back in this week. The results getting a little bit better as they wear it off. Pogacar better today. I want to go to Ineos, Benji, Yates, Castroviejo, Dunbar, Gegenhardt, Sebastian Hanel, Gianni Moscon, Pavel Sivakov. Yates is, I think, that clear leader. Dunbar's often been good in one-day races as a domestique in Italy. But it's all on Yates. Like, I think when Roglic is this good, you really need to have a chance. The quick step 1-2 options, and Gegenhardt's just not that this year.
Yeah, today as well. In Torino, that's a new city. In Torino, he also wasn't at the level necessary to do great stuff there because he was dropping at the bottom of the first Superga climb. So when that is happening, you know that it's likely not going to happen on Lombardia for him. Sivakov was quite strong, but Adam Yates was by far the strongest rider on that team and the only one that could remotely compete. And I think he can compete, but he's got the disadvantage that he doesn't have the kick that Roglic does have. And if it ends up becoming them going to the line, then my money's on Roglic either way on that hill or on the sprint itself, stuff like that. So it's unlikely that Adam Yates gets into a situation to win unless it's a situation where he can ride away from a group and the others look at each other a bit. But the climb is too far from the finish line for that to happen for me.
I don't think so. I think if he's on nuclear mode, he can hold it. But the problem is, I just don't think he's going to have he's a great one-day race, Adam Yates. I think he's the only guy that could solo away from Yates and from Roglic and Pogacar on that climb and stay away. But it's, as Benji said, it is far, and I'm not sure he's even good enough to do that, to be honest. I think, and will his team, Benji, will he even have the team? Because you can't pace the whole climb. Will these guys be still there on that last climb to pace? And looking at Jumbo-Visma, it's, again, I'm not trusting the start list. It doesn't have One Day Coos on it, and One Day Coos was good at Amelia. He his first one day race in ages. He actually did pretty well. I think this is, if he was going to be good at a one day race, Benji, this is like the stages that Coos wins in Grand Tours. They've got Roglic, Bennett, maybe not Bowman, Kreuzweig, Omen, Vingegaard, and I'm assuming Coos. Vingegaard was okay at Amelia, came 12th. What do you think their strategy is, Benji? Do you think, if you're Roglic, you look at that Deceuninck team, it can't be to wait till it finish. I think that's way too defensive and risky, and other teams are going to just try and work you over. And I think Amelia, it was kind of fortunate it played out that way. And it nearly, as you said, didn't play out perfectly for him at Torino today. So do you think he will be going on the attack earlier?
Oh, I don't know. That's a very good question. If you look at a team, I think Vingegaard is the best domestique for him. Vingegaard, sorry. My excuses. It's been a while since we had to say that name in this podcast, since the Tour de France. But I think he's the second best rider on the team there. And I don't expect Kus to play the biggest role in this race personally. I don't have the confidence in his form at the moment. As simple as that. I'm kind of surprised to not see George Bennett there, but I recall Torino being the last race that he rides together with his lads in that team, so that's a bit surprising. So yeah, Vingegaard will stay on for quite long. I think he was also one of the last riders in Emilia, and actually played a pretty solid role in the group to try and work things over and attack left and right. So I am not that bearish on the performances of your boy Vingegaard here. But,
I forgot. You're right.
I don't know what strategy they could do. What do you think?
Emilia's a good example. And when I asked, could Almeida and Evenepoel have worked over Roglic isolated Emilia? I forgot Jonas was the guy neutralizing the counterattacks a lot before that final climb of that circuit. So, yeah, Jonas will be very, very important for Roglic. He can't be closing down attacks with 60 Ks to go to the finish. Sorry, there's a child outside having a tantrum, which you might be able to hear. Just go shout at it. But yeah, Roglic is the favourite, and I think he's probably still my pick for the race. Israel Startup Nation, though, Benji. Demarchi just won at what race did he win? Trevally Varecine. Dan Martin's good, obviously good at Lombardia in Italy and this sort of parkour. Ben Hermans, Nealons, Mike Woods. They're all outstanding riders on this parkour, but how would you use them? Because Woods descending, not great. I don't see him going from long. I think he's good in a punchy finish. Would you be surprised to see Martin in the group of 5 on the last major climb?
Well, on the climb, he might still be there if the descents before that have not been ridden crazily, but I just don't trust his descending on that second last climb, and that long descent will likely have an influence in his position. Same with Woods, but Woods is not a great descender, that's for certain, but we've also had moments where he is able to stay with the group. So if he can stay with the group, then he can stay with the group. But his climbing today wasn't good enough to stay with Roglic and Yates and so forth. But the question then is, well, is that going to happen on that race on Lombardia? Because it's still a way to go after that big climb. Or are they going to save a bit of energy and not go all out on that climb, and therefore Woods might be able to stick on at the back for a bit? I am not 100% sure I trust this man. I'm more looking at the intense qualities of Chris Froome on this parkour, obviously.
Before we round out some of the last names we need to watch, I'll just mention our show partner, Le Col, who produced Performance Cycling Apparel. Obviously, their McLaren Project Aero kit just broke the women's world hour record with Joss Loudon last week. But if you want to check out any of their kit coming into winter, check it out at www.lecol.cc. The link in the description down below for Lecol's Performance Cycling Apparel. Names I'm surprised if they're not there, Benji. Ben O'Connor, I think this is perfect for him. He's good in stages that have long climbs but do not finish on a climb, aka non-mountaintop finishes. That's where he's been successful often, except for the stage he won to Tignes, I think, in the Tour de France. Vlasov, not the level that he certainly was in the Italian Classics last year in one of his last races for Astana. But your boy Benji, I've been kind of mean to him all year. Nibali is back. Cecilia, good watts per kilo. where's he attacking? Which descent is Nibali attacking on this weekend?
I think that he's going to stay on to the group until that bigger kilometer day, the third last climb, and he's going to get dropped there. And that's going to be the end of
Benji.
Vincenzo Nibali on the Lombardia
Oh,
parkour. I do not have confidence in his climbing, despite in Sicilia him being good enough to drop the likes of, well, who was it again? Was it a Kovi uphill? So
it's
Kovi's
good
a
numbers
decent
though.
climber, but, well, nah, I don't believe in it. Like, in Italian press, he's already being named as the new favorite for next year's Giro as a consequence of winning Giro di Sicilia.
Dude.
So I don't know, man. Like I would have loved to see Nibali win this Lombardia, but there has to happen this, like some weird stuff has to happen for that to occur on that race. And I'm afraid the shark is going to drown on the climb, and therefore won't be able to put some pressure on the likes of Remco in the descent afterwards, unless he goes really early and attacks really early. That's the only way he might be able to get into an elite group at a certain point. But I don't have confidence, and I'm sorry, Nibali fans and myself, but I just don't see it this time around.
So Pino's back, yeah. Pino. Is he been doing all right?
He DNF'd Torino. I don't know what happened there. I haven't seen him, but he was decent at Bernocchi. He was in the group with Evenepoel, and Evenepoel rode away on the flattest section. So it's very hard to judge what would have happened if Evenepoel tried on the uphill. So yeah, he was able to follow the move with Pino there, but then again, so did Antonio Pupio of Kubeka. So I'm not so certain that's a big highlight. But nonetheless, big experience in this race. Won Lombardia in 2018, and it's a different parkour though, right? Because like we're
so
comparing
different.
it to previous Il Lombardias, but it's going to be ridden differently because we had to say Viglio to wait for on many occasions. Last year they didn't do it because they decided to go mad early with the Koenig going ham on Madonna del Ghisallo and Muro di Sermano. But this time around, I just see the same happening. I think the Koenig with Devenines will try and launch Evenepoel again on that third last climb. And the Donessa or Docena, I forgot it again. I can't read it because it's upside down now. But the third last climb of the day, that's where I see it opening up myself. But do you see it that the same way, or do you think it's going to be later in the race?
I think it's going to be earlier. I mean, the Civiglio is, what is it, an 8-minute effort, 8-9-minute effort? These climbs are much longer than that. Maybe I'm underestimating it. And I just see Jumbo-Visma or Ineos, and Quickstep have to make it hard. And I think Evenepoel has to go early. That's how he wins. They have the team set it up early. They're not going to wait to, Quickstep's game plan is not going to be, let's just bring a group of 30 to the finish and hope Joao wins the sprint. Come on, it's not going to be their plan.
Yeah, but you're saying earlier, but I'm talking about attacking with 100K to go.
Yes.
How early do you think it's going to happen?
Let me tilt my head sideways. It wouldn't surprise me to see Quickstep trying on the Bergamo climb, although maybe showing a domestique up the road or bridging to a break that might be being, if there's a weak Pro Conti break that's being caught at that point, Benji, and there's not a strong early break, then maybe Quickstep and other teams and Ineos try and send riders up the road.
Cataneo up the road? That seems like a rider that when you bridge to him, he would be an engine to pull. You're right.
Yeah.
So that's something I would notice, but yeah, I think that's a strategy. I think the Koenig will be the one opening up the race. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
And then the others will try and follow. I think Pogacar will respond to Remco. I think Roglic will have learned that Remco is a guy to follow. The question is he going to respond himself, or will he use Vingegaard to try and counter that and stay with Almeida or stuff like that? I think he's going to counter himself as well,
I'm keen to see how Patrick Conrad goes. He's probably not in his Tour de France form, but he won a stage in the Tour that had a lot of 20 to 25-minute climbs and just was really strong across 70 kilometers, being chased by a group with David Gaudu, who's also here, I believe, for FDJ. Bora's team, Schachmann bizarrely at Paris-Roubaix is now here for Lombardia, the race again that he can't win because it's too hard for him, like the Olympics, and he missed the races he could have won, like Baranocchi or Trevale Varacine or Giro dell'Emilia. But anyway, he's here with Grosjean, Fabro, Aliotti, Buchmann, Schelling, allegedly. Paulus, I'm keen to see, for EF Education Nippo, he Like he won Classic of San Sebastian, which is probably the most comparable one-day race we've had recently. And he was very, very strong there. That was a
San
sprint.
Sebastian's overrated.
Overrated? I'm just saying it's got a 4K 10.5% climb in it, preceded by the Hayuska Bell. The thing is, he's in good form, but that was it on a flatter course at Worlds. But yeah, who do you think from EF will perform the best? I've got Paulus.
I think I'm going to go with Higuita based on his performances in Trevale Varzine, where he was also in the second group together with Pogacar. So he can't be in terrible form, and he had Uran working for him at a certain point in the race. So I don't think Uran's going to be the man to do it for the team there. I think we've skipped one name that perhaps could do well, and it's Mollema, because Mollema and Lombardia kind of fits, doesn't it? The question is, can he follow on the last climb? Today he was not able to follow because he was in the second peloton, caught up by the echelon. And, well, as a consequence, he had to bridge over. He was able to bridge over, but then faded because he spent too much energy bridging over. So
I don't see it.
Well, I didn't see it last time he won, so...
Yeah, but he did a good Civilio time, I think. But I think... DSM, again, big caveat. If these guys are on their Vuelta form, would love it. Stora
was really good in Torino. Same story. He was able to bridge over from second peloton to the first one.
Okay.
But then faded because he had to bridge over in the same way that Mollema did, to be honest. But he was strong enough to be noticeable and notable for Lombardia.
Again, not a man you want to let in a break, or even Chris Hamilton or Benoit, to be honest. Movistar, Valverde's not on the list, but Valverde, pretty sure, said he was coming back from his injury to do Lombardia. Otherwise, no Miguel Angel Lopez, obviously, because he doesn't have a contract with Movistar anymore, which is a shame. I remember he did well at Torino, or might have even won Milano Torino once, so I would have liked to see him at the Classics here, and I think this course... so much climbing would have been very, very nice for Miguel Angel Lopez to assist or even go for the win. Quintana's looked actually quite good for Arkea Samsic. Miguel Eduardo Flores on that team's kind of not developing the way people wanted. Any other big long shots, Benji? Like, they haven't brought... Is Dina not going there for YOLO? So it's Fortunato's the man, right?
Yeah, but I don't see it happening, mainly because he's good at climbing, obviously, but he doesn't have a finish. So, yeah, he's potentially looking at a top 20, 25, but I don't expect too much more than that personally. Vetter has been in great form, but he's always faded towards the end of races. The second that he's not in a position where he can compete for the victory, he seems to be the guy that drops through a bit and tries to save energy for coming days, and therefore his results don't shine the performances that he actually performed. But we're skipping over Bora quite a bit with Schachmann, and you mentioned Conrad. But do you expect something from like Buchmann and Schachmann? Because was Schachmann not the guy that like was hit by a bus or like a car or something?
A car on the course last year. But I think the last year he got hit by a car that came onto the course at the end. But I just prefer him much, much more on last year's parcours than this parcours.
Yeah.
I much prefer like Maida, Padun, Roglic, proper climbing guys on this parcours. No offense to Schachmann, but guys who can get over 25-minute climbs at a good pace easily. But yeah, what about Maida, Benji? I've no idea of his condition. He's not done any of the tune-up races. I barely believe he's doing this race, but if he is, and Padun's been training hard, I reckon Padun's the dark horse.
He could implode. That's the question. He was imploding in the other race, European Conti champs. Also, when he was in the front
terrible
group,
form.
He didn't have the fat stage of Pro race, the race that Stephen Williams won. So it was a domestique for Stephen Williams. But hey, he's an outsider, okay? Yeah. A real dark horse.
Tarame? Menkes? Wait, is Menkes
no
back?
Fucking way. Mate. Why not? Who was Jan good Hurts? From that team at the race today? Because I swear there was like a guy from that team that bridged over from the second peloton to the first peloton on the second to last Superga. It was Tarame.
Yeah, Rain's in good form. There's disrespect. Bike Exchange, they've got Yates as their leader. Anyway, I want to just narrow in, get Benji's podium picks, and before I get that though, Benji, Lombardia, is it suffering from Roubaix being so close to it? Why is it that I personally don't think there's as much hype for Lombardia as the other monuments?
I think so as well, but I also never had that hype for Lombardia in the same way. And it's mainly for me that it's towards the end of the season and I started getting a bit oversaturated with cycling, which is, I know it's a heinous crime and something horrible to say, but it happens sometimes, and sometimes you need an off season. And because Lombardia is like one of the last races, I'm like, okay, it's kind of the end. So yeah, it's let's enjoy it one last time. But usually it's not the race that I'm like, oh, super hyped to get to watching, but I really enjoyed it last year. I think I'm going to enjoy it this year. And I'm trying to avoid saying a pick because I want to ask a question first. What do you know about Colbrelli? Because he's riding Piemonte tomorrow, as in the day before Lombardia.
Yeah.
Well,
Which
what
is
do
a
we expect?
flatter finish, I think.
Is he gonna do Lombardia or not? Because a lot of people are saying that he's a guy that could do well at Lombardia, but he's never been on the start list and hasn't said anything about Lombardia all season. So if he competes, would you see him do well on this parkour?
I can't rule him out anymore. But I mean, Jesus. I mean, if they're dumb enough to make it over the final climb with him, then they got everything coming to them. Like the last 3Ks of that is like 8.5%.
I think Roglic can beat Colbrelli in the sprint.
Yeah, I mean, people were roasting me for saying Colbrelli's slow. I mean, yeah, I still think he's not the fastest sprinter in the world. He's just maybe doesn't lose as much of it. But yeah, I'm not sure. I would start him just as a threat, Benji, because honestly, is Padun really going to be better than Colbrelli in the shape Padun's in? Probably not.
And before Padun does a Dauphiné.
Yeah, well, Jesus. I mean, no one can see that coming. But yeah, that's...
Yeah, my pick. Sorry. I still have to do that. My winner for this race is at Remco Evenepoel, and he's going to do it very, very early. And I have no clue how he's going to drop Roglic. But hey, you fill in the blanks, okay?
I'm going with Roglic, Almeida, Adam Yates.
Aramburu's riding this race.
No, he pulled out, didn't he? Didn't he DNF today?
A different Aramburu, right?
Oh.
For Oiskeltel.
The one you're not blocked by.
His name joking. Not even joking.
Are we under any Pogacar? The last thing I think is I just want to be careful with. There's Dauphiné Pogacar and then there's Tour de France Pogacar,
but there's 2 days in between. And
I know that's the difference. Yeah, Jesus. Well, okay, but still,
you can't rule him out for the victory. He can still win this race. Like, if they go together to the sprint, like a straight up sprint, I think Pogacar beats Roglic personally.
Yeah, you get a nice lead.
But if it's on the climb itself that Roglic goes all out, I think Pogacar's dropping. But does he have enough time to bridge it back in the valley afterwards? I doubt it. So, yeah, it's all going to come down to how the race is ridden and who responds to Evenepoel's attack very early on and what happens in that group that he gets away. And if people miss that split or not, stuff like that can happen. I'm looking forward to experiencing it. So, can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see also Piemonte the day before. If you don't know what that race is, the one where I think Van der Poel almost won that last year, where he tried to follow the attack of George Bennett and then Bennett won in the end.
Yep.
Vaguely remember something like that.
Easy finish this year, I think.
Perhaps some riders that do that also ride Piemonte, but I don't actually know because I haven't checked it. So that is a very curious question. Let me take a look swiftly.
Kuss is doing it, and Colbrelli. So
okay,
it's quite a good style. It's got Hayter with Luke Plapp, I think, might be making his debut for Ineos. But yeah, I think Lombardia has a start list that really is something you should be watching. We have, these big talents going up against each other in a one-day race, a monument for maybe the first time, and you never know when it's the last. We're just missing, I think, Bernal is the big one missing from this race. But when Remco attacks, Hausler too. When Remco attacks, maybe James Whelan respond. Remember, Jonathan Vorder said that James Whelan has more power at World Tour level than Remco. It's just based on Remco's RVV virtual performance last year. So we'll see how that plays out. I can't wait to see it, and we'll see you with the recap afterwards. Ciao.